Encounters with ICE agents have led to 3 deaths in a week. Agents shot a father in Houston, gunned down a young man in Maine, and chased a man to his death in Florida. The first 2 weren't the targets of an arrest. The third appeared to be part of routine racial profiling operations. Here to break all this down from Oklahoma is Fernando Baquera Ochoa, an educator and activist alerting his people to ICE activity. Fernando, thank you so much for joining In Depth with Dion.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I appreciate you making the trip from Oklahoma City to Tulsa. And you are someone who makes these trips frequently when it comes to going on the road, seeing what ICE is doing, and then relaying that information back to the communities. Before we get into the conversation, I want to start with, why did you decide to put your own personal well-being at risk in such a high-profile way?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me again. So I'm originally from Mexico. I was born in Chihuahua, Mexico. We migrated here in '96. So we've been here for over 30 years. I grew up my whole life in a community that was majority Hispanics, Latinos, immigrants. And so growing up, having the values that my parents have taught me, my siblings, my aunts, uncles, people in my community, the narrative that has been painted of my community, it's not who we really are. And so I really felt like I had to step in and prove who we really are as people. And so it has come with some costs for sure, but it's bigger than myself and my home. It's a whole community that's being targeted, and who else to step up than somebody who was part of it and grew up in it.
Well, you've taken on a tall task. You've had conservative groups come out against you.
Yeah.
You've had people try and get you fired, all for simply letting people know what these federal agents are doing in these communities. Most recently, we've had Mark Wayne Mullen, former Oklahoma U.S. Senator, who is now, the head of ICE, after these most recent killings, came out and said that there will be a pause, some type of course correct on these killings that stem from these traffic encounters. Last time I checked, ICE wasn't a traffic cop anyway.
Right.
But then a day after, maybe less than a day after, Mullen makes this statement, Trump reverses.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I laughed a little because I know Mark Wayne Mullen's ego was hurt. It's hard. I want to say I almost appreciated his take. It shouldn't have taken these deaths. We know how they have been operating for the last year and a half. But then Trump coming out immediately and reversing it put the community back on edge. I communicated to them, hey, we can live somewhat normal for however long this is going to be. And it lasted less than 24 hours. First of all, the disregard for the position that Trump gave Mark Wayne Mullen, like I said, I know it hurt his feelings for sure. But then, how is the president of the United States okay with people getting gunned down in the middle of the day in this country? Is he really here to protect and serve? Like, how dangerous is that? Masked men out shooting people in the middle of the day, and the president sees nothing wrong with that. I don't know if you read his Truth Social post, but he was applauding them, saying that the people of America love them and appreciate them, and they're doing amazing work. I was honestly sick to my stomach.
It looked like, from a journalist PR perspective, damage control, trying to change the narrative. You put out a post basically letting people know that Trump reversed what Mullen had said, and that there are certain protocols you need to take for yourself when you're going to work, when you're getting out on the road, when you're going to the gas station. Can you talk about how has this administration's deployment of ICE impacted people's day-to-day lives?
So we know now that ICE is able to pull somebody over based on how you look. If you're brown, if you speak English with an accent, or you speak another language, if you look like you work construction, yard work, and that includes the type of vehicle that you're in. So, my dad has worked my whole entire life since we lived here, and he is a man of routine. He loves to get up super early, turn on the news, get ready for work, head to the gas station, grab his coffee, and then head to work. Many of our dads are like that. And so, one of the main tactics that ICE has been using, I'm sure all over the country, but I like to be specific with the information that I give to what's going on in the Oklahoma City metro area, is that they will camp out outside of gas stations like On-Q, 7-Elevens, camp out, and they'll watch vans and trucks pull in, get gas, grab their coffee, grab their donut, and mile and a half down the road, they'll pull them over and question to see who's undocumented in those vehicles. And that's how they've taken a lot of our people. So I encouraged our people, hey, let's continue with not stopping at gas stations in the morning. I've gone up at 6 in the morning to drive around. Gas stations are empty because this has been a tactic that everybody has noticed. I encourage our people to grab copies of their keys because ICE doesn't tow vehicles, which that's kind of a good thing, because we don't have to go through the struggle of taking it out of when it gets impounded. But they'll take the keys with them, and they won't leave keys behind. And then I also encouraged our community to not ride together. Our people love to ride together, pile them up in a van and, head to work. Well, if they pull somebody over, there's not 6 people in there. There's maybe 1 or 2 individuals. And so it has completely changed the way our routines, the way we operate, the way we get to work, how we work together as a community. It has really, again, really changed our lives in a drastic way.
And we're talking about, again, civil infractions,
Right?
alleged civil infractions, because a lot of these cases, and in one of the deaths this week, they had, they were authorized to work in the U.S.
Right.
They were authorized to be here in the U.S.
Yeah.
And when we talk about camping out, they've been at courthouses just waiting. People going to their scheduled appointments as they're supposed to be going, doing what they
Right.
think is the right thing to do, only to be taken from their families, sometimes ripped from their arms in just a traumatic, violent way. I know, I gotta be careful about how I say this. I'm not gonna be careful about how I say this. These are modern day slave catchers.
Absolutely.
And I think it's time for us to wake up to the reality of what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
This is, not simply law enforcement going after people violating the law. This is a coordinated effort that the Trump administration, members of the administration, including Stephen Miller, have blatantly said. It's about getting, Hispanic people, people of certain demographics just out of the country.
Yeah. And they've mentioned a number, and I'm not gonna quote it because I don't remember, but it was the number that they said was the amount of Hispanic Latinos in the country, not the ones that are undocumented. So, to your point, they have blatantly said we want this many millions out, and that's all of us. That's all brown folk, documented or undocumented. So it's definitely a system that was used back to catch slaves. Now they're using the same system, the same structure to catch brown folk.
And I like how you said that, the same system, because even if you don't want to compare the two issues,
Right.
it's undeniable that they've learned from how, slavery operated, and they're utilizing that now. I want to go into some of these specific killings. So in Houston, and forgive me, y'all, Lorenzo Salgado Arrojo was fatally shot by ICE in Houston, Texas, on his way to work.
Yeah.
A former Houston City Council member, Robert Gallegos, said he was Gallegos said he was racially profiled.
Yeah.
That he was a man that sent 3 kids to college, a hardworking small business owner. In Maine, they killed a 25-year-old father, Juan Sebastian Duran Guerrero from Colombia. He was authorized to work here in the U.S. He had a social security number, according to the Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition, and he wasn't the target
Yeah.
of the operation. Florida, you have a young 28-year-old who is, in a car with others on their way to work, stopping at a gas
At a
station
gas station, yeah.
before 7 a.m. ICE, comes after them. They flee. He's shot while running away. You talked about why you felt it was important to be someone who alerts the community about what's happening. What do you feel needs to happen, at least in the Oklahoma City area, next?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think people just need to become educated. You know, we hear a lot of the social media, but politics have groomed our minds to think that everybody who is categorized as an illegal alien, which I don't like that term. I prefer undocumented individual, but illegal alien is a criminal. So like even myself, as an immigrant myself, as someone who comes from a different country, when I hear that word illegal alien, my mind jumps to a criminal, to someone with tattoos that has done drugs and all these terrible things. But that, like you mentioned earlier, being undocumented or illegal alien is a civil violation, right? And so I think there has to be some education happen in our state, particularly our state. Also, we hear a lot. Well, just become a citizen. They've told me, I'm a homeowner. I have a master's degree. I work in public education. Like, well, just become a citizen. There is no pathway for me to become a citizen. Me being in the country for over 30 years, I don't have a way to apply for any kind of permanent status in the United States. So I think there has to be a lot of education done on that side. People need to understand, what this term really means, the processes, how it varies for different countries. And I think people also need to just stand up for their neighbors. You love the Mexican restaurant. You love that waiter. You love the cook. You love your yard guy. Do you see them as a person? Have you made those connections with them? So then why are you supporting a system that wants that person out of here? That wants that person shot and killed in broad daylight? So I think people have divided them. I have people that really care for me that are hardcore Trump supporters to this day. And so, I have those hard conversations with them. You can't love me, or you can't claim to love me if you support a system that wants me out of here. And so, again, just having these very uncomfortable conversations with people because, I can't vote. I can't vote in this country. So it's almost like I don't have a voice. We need those who have a voice to start making these connections with people that they interact with on a daily basis.
And, the histories of these places show that no one group should be able to claim this land, first of all.
Right.
It's Turtle Island, right? It's home to indigenous people for thousands, 10,000 plus years. People of modern day Mexican descent have been in Texas, or land that's now called Texas, Oklahoma, for hundreds of years, if not longer. And it was really through the civil rights movement and the gains that black people, white people fought for that opened up our immigration laws to include more people.
Yeah.
And so when we think about that history, why wouldn't we want to see each other as human?
Right.
But then you have this politics from these white supremacists who want to remake the country in their own image.
Yeah.
And we're going back to work as if this is just a normal thing. I feel like I'm in an episode of Black Mirror.
No, listen.
And I'm screaming, but
Yeah.
I mean, you're screaming, and you're trying to get people to hear you, or maybe don't look up, and the comments coming,
Yeah.
and you're shouting, Do you feel hopeful? Do you feel rejected? Like, how do you feel when it comes to the response to your activism?
You know, I really haven't had time or taken the time to sit down and think how I feel. There's so many people, and not because I hold anything special, but so many people depend on me. Someone just made a post the other day and said, you know, who else wakes up and goes straight to Fernando's page, which I hate that that's what we're living in. I really do. Um, I kind of what you mentioned earlier off before we got on air, you know, uh, we're hopeful that this is going to be over eventually, but why are we complicit now? Like, why are we waiting for that moment instead of taking action now? It's kind of where my mind is, and so that's why I've mobilized, and you know, and it is tiring. It is tiring because there's no way that I myself can go against a whole entire system that has all the power in this country. But change has to come. I don't know how and I don't know when, but it has to come.
You know, some people might try and play the what about game. Um, there's been deaths in custody under the Biden administration. There has been more deportations under the Obama administration. So what's different about the Trump administration, the second Trump administration?
I think obviously more people have phones and easily can, you know, post. Um, I think the dehumanization of, you know, brown folk plays a big role. I think the hunger for power and money. I made a post yesterday where I talked about how the detention facilities are privately owned by two different companies, both Trump's friends.
Core Civic and Geo Group.
Mm-hmm. And the U.S. pays around $165 a day per undocumented folk. There's about 65,000 people detained right now in these facilities. That was over 10 million something a day that we pay these companies.
So if you got stock in Core Civic, you're doing really well right now.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Especially because in Oklahoma, I believe all of our detention facilities are Core Civic. So they are, I mean, they're banking over 10 million a day to detain our folk, and that's not including when they transport them. And they last night in Oklahoma City, it was midnight. There was a bus transporting a group of undocumented folk, and this morning at 6:30 in the morning, I got another video of them seeing another bus full of individuals. So you know these companies are making money. So it's about power and it's about money. That's what makes it different.
You know, we've seen members of Congress around the country try to get access to these facilities. You know, at least one member of Congress is facing criminal charges. I don't think I've ever seen this level of basically in my lifetime disregard for the equal branches of government.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about a young man, a 19-year-old U.S. soldier from Oklahoma City, who was found dead on the base in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas,
Yeah.
on July 8th. What do you know about that?
So Fernando was a 19-year-old recently graduate from Aztec Charter School there in Oklahoma City. Apparently, he had thought about joining the military since middle school. Really excited. From what I hear from his friends and family, is that he had joined the military because if you join the military, there's a possibility where you can give your parents legal status.
Really?
He's half Guatemalan, half Mexican. And unfortunately, on July 8th of this year, 2026, he was found dead. Now, the family has gotten conflicting stories. First, they said they found him in his dorm, and then they said they found him in a car. They ruled it suicide almost immediately, and there has been no deep investigation from the U.S. Army into this case. And so, similar to the deaths of Lorenzo and Sebastian, we have seen this story again of black and brown folk in the military, where they rule it suicide and wipe their hands and move on. And so it's heartbreaking because, again, 19-year-old, fresh out of high school, just starting his life, no longer here, and the parents don't have answer. I can't imagine that anguish that they must have, of that heaviness of not knowing what really happened to their son.
Yeah. And not knowing if there will ever be justice.
Yeah, yeah. And so the family has started a GoFundMe to get money for an attorney and to do an outside investigation on what happened to their son, which, again, I don't understand where or why or when did we lose full transparency in this country with the equal branches of government.
Maybe around the time that a certain guy decided to try and blatantly get rid of a constitutional amendment, birthright citizenship. Or maybe in 2020 when he had his followers trying to attack the U.S. Capitol. I can't keep up.
Crazy.
I can't.
Crazy.
I can't keep
and you
up.
know what? Right after that happened, 2024, June of 2024, I was at the U.S. Capitol, and we toured it as a group. It was a large group of people from all over the world, and I asked the question. I was like, "Hey, how was it? January 6th, 2020." And she was like, well, it was only about $3.5 million worth of damage, but it wasn't nothing too bad. I was like, all right, I know where you stand. I'm gonna retract, and enjoy the tour. But it's crazy how we don't hold certain people accountable for their actions. We want to go and target undocumented folk for working, for building, for keeping. There is not a building, I believe, that in this country that you cannot touch that an undocumented hand has touched to build. I strongly believe that. But yeah, we want to hold them accountable, but we don't want to hold these people that have been in certain islands and have scammed the U.S. out of millions of dollars in taxes. And
I saw that Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna and some, I can't remember exactly which lawmakers signed on to it, but they introduced a new bill that would allow state attorneys general to use federal law to investigate Epstein-linked crimes on the state level.
Is that the 2.0 that they?
I think so.
Yeah.
And we've seen how difficult it was, to get anything related, just to get the Epstein files out, right? How much of this, when it comes to these blatant, I think it's, international, I think it's violations of international law in terms of trying to displace an ethnic group. How much of this do you think is a distraction from Trump's own crimes?
Yeah.
Or his friends?
Right. There's a comedian that has said, there's the pyramids in the Middle East that people argue who built them, but nobody argues who built the pyramids in Mexico because they know how hardworking we are, right? And so, they have groomed our minds to build this narrative about undocumented folk, that we're all criminals, we're all these bad things. And so the noise, we're being used as noise, as a distraction, because soon enough, he's going to be out of office and, and he's going to not be held accountable for anything, but, undocumented folk. Like, it's our fault that rent is high and properties are high. And it's our fault that, your Social Security is being cut. And we're voting in elections, even though we can't vote. And we're taking your food stamps and, we're doing all these things, like undocumented folk that have no legal status is doing, but not the rich, powerful, corrupt governments that they have shown us time and time again that they are corrupt, and so we're definitely kind of, I kind of see as like those cat toys that you use for your cats that you just jingle and they'll go after it and they're all locked in on that little jingle toy. That's what I feel like we are right now to this country.
So I want to leave you with this. How do we activate to protect our neighbors without waiting for a killing, while also recognizing that he's using one community's pain to distract us.
You know, I think I don't want to say make sure you vote. I mean, I do, but I know there's more to that. I know that, uh, you know, the people who turn out to the polls, the lowest numbers are black and brown folk. Our people don't vote. My brother, who is about to be 30, has never voted in his life, and he's a U.S. citizen. And
I
so,
know you'd be going off on him.
listen, he's not registered to vote. Yeah, after this, I'm like, you know what? Either you're cut off or you vote.
That's the first step.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, holding those who can have a voice for us accountable. And so voting for sure, you know, voting people and then holding those people accountable to what you said you were going to run for. Now, after this administration, I don't know how long it's going to take us to repair back to respect and value elected officials because we have no respect for elected officials right now because of our main example, right? And just, you know, it doesn't have to be nothing radical. You know, I don't think I'm doing anything radical. To some people, it may look like I am. But just simply, you know, saying, hey, I see you. Hey, I hear you. Hey, I'm here for you. Hey, I'm going to vote for you. I'm going to vote that your rights are protected, that you as a human being are respected. You know, there is I've been kind of calling out businesses in the Oklahoma City metro area that have been very silent, that profit off of our people. But there was a venue put out a statement like, hey, our property is a safe space for you guys. When you guys rent with us, we have our own security, and then it becomes a private area, so there's no agency that can come into this property unless they have a judicial warrant signed by a judge. And so that itself like spoke volumes, you know, and we felt good and we felt seen and we felt, you know, loved and embraced by our community. And so voting and again just letting your community know that, hey, I stand with you, I see you, and I'm here for you.
Fernando, Ochoa, thank you so much for joining In Depth with Dion and for all the work that you're doing to
Appreciate
inform
it.
communities.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.